Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
So, given that the other formats are about to have a banning, let's go with standard with M21.
Yeah. Monday should be interesting for some of those other formats, but to look at some of the stuff, and there's been some new stuff. To look at this,
sure.
Like some stuff that's going to have confident relevance after Monday's shakeup. There were a couple. There was a few recent events actually that had some new twists on some stuff that we've seen, including getting to the spot where there's starting to be some of the metagame tuning that I know you love so much.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of decks I thought that were interesting, but there are two decks that I was in love with from this past week.
Oh yeah,
standard challenges.
Yeah. What were those?
The standard challenge from 7-5, first place mono green deck played by Edel.
Yep. I had that one circled with your name on it.
I confess, I have been only playing this deck on MTGA since this deck came out. No changes. I do think that the sideboard maybe could use a little tuning, and I'd love to hear your input. So, Edel played. Is that Willie Edel? I don't know.
I think so.
Played a deck that is very similar to some of the decks we've been talking about. A little bit bigger than kind of the mono offense V Moshowitz sort of mono green deck, but a lot of cards in common. But two big changes from the first.
It's not Mike Turian green. It's V. Okay, got it.
No.
Love it. Okay.
Two big changes. One, two main deck copies of the Great Henge, Patrick. I called it.
I know.
Two main deck.
You're right.
Love it.
You're right. You're right.
And the other one, this is so profound. I did not realize what a big difference this made to the archetype until I got beat by it a few times. And then I was like, all right, I think this is one of those if you can't beat them, join them things. Nissa Who Shakes the World ×2 in the main deck. And it seems weird to say that, considering this has been a dominant planeswalker for kind of as long as it's existed. But it's very good in this deck relative to Vivian or Garruk or some the other big cards people have been playing.
Yeah, like some of the stuff people have been playing, the Vivian and Garruk you mentioned, and then also the Hydra, the one that can fight.
Yeah.
Using two copies of Nissa and two copies of the Great Henge, it's a little bit different of an angle that gives you a bit more, first of all, raw power, but ability to actually play a little bit bigger of a game than some of those other options.
Yeah, so the thing about Nissa that I didn't realize is because Nissa historically, I think, has been played in decks that don't necessarily have a lot of creatures other than the Nissa lands themselves, where, Nissa's enabling a Hydroid Crisis. I guess it can sometimes play with cards like Nightpack Ambusher, but it's not in a, quote, creature deck, right? So what I found in this deck was you don't need that many Nissas because, among other things, it doesn't have that many lands. It only has 24 lands, and it's mostly creatures. You just kind of gum up the ground and then just start making 3/3s, and that's like really hard for people to attack you, even if they have flyers, because you have like Gem Razors, and you have Stonecoil Serpents, and you have Kraul Harpooner, so they just can't really get to Nissa, which I thought was pretty interesting. Like most of my experience in playing Nissa is in creature poor decks, and like a super creature rich deck, it's so gummed up. And then you're just like, all right, tick up ultimate. And it's awfully hard to lose when you just drew 20 land. There are 22 forests in this deck.
I mean, but part of it with the thing with Nissa in this deck too, though, is the 4 Stonecoil Serpent and 4 Primal Might. That's 8 X spells. And in a deck with 22 forests, you're going to end up in a lot of spots where you're just like, oh, I guess, surprise, just Primal Might for like 14 or whatever.
Yes, it can be very, very big. I think that, your mileage is going to vary a lot on that for a couple of reasons. One, I've been trying to be more disciplined about when I played my Stonecoil Serpents, but I think a fair amount of the time you have to play your Stonecoil Serpents early. But, if you draw one later, or you've been holding one because you were very disciplined, you could get a really big one. But yeah, both of those things are very big plays, obviously.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes you'll just do something like let's say you got Nissa, they sweep the board, and now all they have to do is try to contain the Nissa. But on your next turn, you've got 6 forests. You untap, so you have 6 forests, and then you can actually just get 12 mana, play a questing beast, and primal might it for 7, and then boom, just hit him for 11 out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's true. Also, so
I mean, this seems like a nice evolution of the archetype.
Yeah,
talk to me about Elder Gargaroth though.
So, I think that I play Elder Gargaroth maybe more often than it's good. I'm not 100% sure. It hasn't been that impressive to me, and I'm not. I think like maybe in another deck it would be a much better Baneslayer. But like I've mostly been bringing it in against other green decks, and like there are certain other decks. Let's say you're playing against, Teamer Lucky Clover, the Teamer Adventures kind of deck. It's not that powerful against that deck, right? Like all their cards are like 2-for-1s, if not 3-for-1s, and you're just like, all right, this isn't good enough. And even if you're playing against like Gruul or another mono green deck or something, by the time you can cast Elder Gargaroth, because it costs 5 mana to cast, and you can't even really get a benefit from Castle Garenbrig or anything on it, like they could just have it's going to sound stupid, but like a 6/6 Pelt Collector or something. So it's like it's not even that big, right? On a relative basis, it has been okay for me.
Part of what's going on here is that with only 2 copies of Gemrazor and 4 copies of Stonecoil Serpent, you're just a little too light to actually be on a ram through plan. And clearly, with the 4 copies of Ram Through in the sideboard, Edo wants to be on the Ram Through plan. So there's 2 more copies of Gemrazor going up to 8, but that's still just a little short because you really want to get some value out of Ram Through. And my guess here is that the theory is that Elder Gargaroth is also covering some of that duty.
I think so. I also think like
doesn't look that good to me though.
Well, you bring in Ram Through just because it's cheaper than Primal Might and it's semi one-sided. So
you get both.
Well, I don't know if you can have.
You never play both.
I've tried it. I'm not real set on my sideboard plans yet. I'm not. My current situation that I have against other green decks, for example, is I've been siding out all of my Pelt Collectors, and I'm not sure if that's right or not. But they're very bad in the mid game, and I feel like even if you're getting exchanges or whatever, that just feeds somebody's scavenging ooze, and that somebody might not be you. So
hold on. The thing is, though, isn't the Primal Might cheaper than Ram Through? Like, Primal Might only costs 1.
So
and Ram Through costs 2.
It depends.
Yeah, but you don't have to do the rest.
If you're playing Oakham Adversary after sideboarding, Ram Through only costs 2 and it kills anything without losing your creature. Right? So
definitely.
It's actually dodgy sometimes where you're like, if you have to Primal Might like a questing beast or something like that, you end up losing your guy no matter how big it is. So obviously,
in the green mirror match, definitely. What about against red? You just have too much other stuff. You want Ranger's Guile instead because it's just like all your cards are good.
You really want Ranger's Guile to make them miss with Bone Crusher Giant, because one of the main ways you can lose to red is they drew a bunch of Bone Crusher Giants, which obviously that's like the best card ever against other creature decks. So if you can make them miss with Bone Crusher Giant, then they lose the 4/3. Like you trade your Ranger's Guile for the Stomp, and then they never get the 4/3, and that's much better.
That's great, actually. That's a really good play.
Like if they draw 3 Bone Crusher Giants, like that,
but whatever.
You're just destroyed, right? So,
well, I don't know. If you got a Ranger's Guile, you might just get the better of them. Like you might, if you're on the play and you have a Ranger's Guile for one of them, that Ranger's Guile seems like such a fantastic play.
Yeah. So, your mainline strategy is to just trade with whatever creatures you can against whatever creatures they have, so that in the mid game you don't get completely overwhelmed by some combination of Torbrand, Annex, Embercleave, and Burn spells, right? So you just want to have the highest life total you can, and they don't have that much, and hopefully you've got like 1/5/5 or something to hold the fort down. So it's one of the things that's weird is like normally you'll just play anything into anything, but it's kind of weird where like their Fervent Champion can beat most of your creatures early, because it's very scary to block even a 1/1 Fervent Champion with a 3/3, because they might have, a Rimrock Knight, they might have a Bone Crusher Giant to win in combat. So playing a little bit off curve and leaving up G for the Ranger's Guile is actually surprisingly effective. Like, it doesn't feel right. You were just like, I'm literally going to play off curve by one turn just so I can leave up the Ranger's Guile.
That makes a lot of sense the way you're laying it out.
Yeah, you end up taking like 2 or 3 points of damage from 1/1s that you wouldn't want to. But if it means that if for example, you just don't lose your Scavenging Ooze, and like if your Scavenging Ooze lives in that matchup, it's very likely for you to win. Right, so that guy gets to be like 6/6 and gains like a bunch of life, and they're like, all right, I can't get through that. The card that's really weirdly good in the mono red mirror match, I'm sorry, not mirror match, this mono red matchup, is Gemrazor, because it kills Embercleave, because a lot of the time if Embercleave is coming, it's too late, but it gets Annex, where you just like ting Annex, and then you just one of their strategies is they like have an Annex and he's like 6/3 or something. They just like send everybody and they don't care how many guys die because they're just getting more bodies and they're just going to try to beat you with Embercleave or Torbrand. But if you could just like hit the Annex before it gets out of hand, they get like 1 or 2 1/1s and then you're like, all right, this isn't enough. You've got 4/4. So,
okay.
But I really like this deck. What do you think about the sideboard? I feel like a lot of the cards are like really overlapping with each other, and I don't know. Yeah. I feel like almost all of them are disrupting my main deck a lot. I really like to retain the character of my deck unless I'm actively trying to reposition or transform. And the way that this sideboard is, it's very difficult to do that. Like, you can't stay aggressive a lot of the time when you're siding these cards in.
So I do love Oakham Adversary and Ranger's Guile. And I mean, generally think Gemrazor is a great card. I don't even know if I would only play 2 main deck. I kind of would want more of that card. But I don't know about the rest of the stuff. It seems fine, I guess. I'm just not sure that it's helping in the matchups where I really want, like where I want more help. Like I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but I want to have more against like an Uro Bant ramp deck or one of those Yorion decks.
I've done okay against those decks. I do agree with you. I think that you'd want some sort of persistent way to get them. You mean like a Shifting Ceratops, maybe something like that? Like
could be
when they extinction event you, or they like casualties of war all your threats. You could just get them for 5.
The other wild card one that I don't have experience with yet, maybe you've seen a bunch, is the recent trend towards some of these black aggro decks.
Oh yeah,
have you seen these?
That's a big deck, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a couple different shades of them. One of the ones that did really well recently is the Demonic Embrace sort of version with Kite Sail Freebooter. I guess they don't always play Kite Sail Freebooter. There's a couple of these in this same event in the top 8, but like Mole Drifter was packing 3 copies of Demonic Embrace in Mono Black Aggro, and More Nothings was packing 4 copies of Demonic Embrace. What do you think of these decks?
So I actually think this is one of the best decks in the format, along with some of the ramp decks and the mono green deck. The big thing that's going on here, and I'm looking specifically at Muldrifter's deck, is the return of Rotting Regisaur to Standard. So
as if Rotting Regisaur ever left. Come on.
But it was like a big deal for like, I don't know, end of last year, and then it was just gone. Like 2 cycles, like nobody played it. And it's back with a vengeance, I think in part because of Demonic Embrace. But this deck is really good. So
that's a really cool combo, actually, both coming and going.
Yeah, so the thing about Rotting Regisaur is usually you have to discard 1 or 2 cards that, before you hellbent yourself with it, you have to discard 1 or 2 cards. If one of the cards you're discarding is Demonic Embrace, it's just not that painful, right? So, because you can always buy it back later. So it's just kind of, you're banking it away to put on a threat later. But the thing is, like in the mid game, when you have no cards, you just like rip a land and you're just like, all right, You just buy back Demonic Embrace and slap it onto Rotting Regisaur, and that's 10 in the air. Let's go.
That sounds fantastic.
It's so I think like this strategy.
That's not too bad
really
on
fast.
Stonecoil Serpent either.
No, well, yeah, it's not bad at all on Stonecoil Serpent. It's not bad on anything. It's good on everybody.
I just mean the Stonecoil Serpent can sometimes protect itself. Plus,
Yep.
the Serpent gets a little big sometimes, like if the game stretches, and the Demonic Embrace is such a great way to put that away. But I love that with the Regisaur.
So
Rankle too, to a lesser degree, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think Rankle has like a special spot in this strategy because it just does all these things that nothing else in the deck does, right? So Rankle has haste, right? Like it's just not that many black creatures have haste, and I think like if you say like, all right, I'm gonna square up the board, I'm gonna wrath them or whatever, and just get a breather, and then just like 4 Rankle, at least 3, right? 3 and maybe some other mayhem is gonna happen. The other card that's fantastic,
at least 4, right?
Could be. I mean, sure.
I guess you don't necessarily want them to draw the card.
Yeah, not always. I mean, it's at least 3. Like you have to evaluate, right? But like Blacklance Paragon, I found to be extremely good in this deck, which is weird because it's not like Mono Knights. You know, there's like some pirates, there's some rogues, there's some scorpions, like all kinds of.
I mean, there's no other knights besides the Knight of Ebon Legion, right?
That is, I think that's correct. Yeah, that's not very many. Like I was saying, it's
the
not Mono
Paragon
Knights
here. Yeah, the Blacklance Paragon here, though, can just Blacklance itself.
True.
That's not bad.
The one thing is, like, if you are playing against 2 Knight of the Ebon Legion and they don't have 6, right? So like they only have 5. They just like swing with 2 Knight of the Ebon Legion. You're like, all right, I'm gonna make 2 bad blocks. He's gonna +3/+3 one of them. So it's gonna have like a bazillion toughness. Death Touch is gonna kill my guy, but my other guy will kill his other Knight of the Ebon Legion. Nah, dog. Sometimes he has Blacklance Paragon, and it's a disaster for you. That happens. It's terrible.
No, I believe it. So both of these decks were packing Rotting Regisaur, but there was a difference with the use of Serrated Scorpion or not. Like what's up there? And for Kitesail Freebooter, for that matter. Muldrifter's build with Kitesail Freebooters and Serrated Scorpions certainly looks a little bit different than a build. Plus, I mean, 3 copies of Eliminate and 2 copies of Grasp of Darkness. Actually, now I guess that's standard, but yeah, talk to me about the Freebooter and the Scorpion.
I haven't played against the Freebooter at all myself. I played a lot against the Scorpions. I think the Scorpions are okay in this deck. They're a pretty good curve card, right? Like, this deck doesn't have an overabundance of 1-drops, and the Scorpion, especially if you're going first, will reliably do a couple points of damage before it dies, and then does another couple points of damage. More Nothings deck with 4 Stonecoil Serpent, I think, is kind of primed to go longer. Just because Stonecoil Serpent's a better long game card, but also can be played on turn 1. I don't know. Freebooter seems really, really medium to me in this format. There are a fair number of decks that are mostly creatures, right? And it is quickly outclassed on the battlefield. If you're playing against like a Yorion control deck, I think it's much better. Obviously, it can get their wrath. But I don't know. Maybe it's a good main deck card. You can slap a Demonic Embrace on it for sure. It flies, But I think it's pretty medium and standard. Like, a lot of people are playing Stonecoil Serpents. A lot of people are even like that mono green deck that Edel was playing.
A lot of reach.
It has cards like Crawl Harpooner that are just
Oh my God! Does Harpooner eat the Freebooter for lunch?
Yeah, it's terrible. Like, so, I think Freebooter. I don't think I would play it if I played the mono black deck. I think that I would lean heavily on Eliminate and Grasp of Darkness, which weirdly I think are the cards that make this deck, because all the rest of the deck was already legal and it was not doing.
No, I believe it. I mean, Eliminate seems just like what this deck was looking for—a way to turn its removal from being like necessary but so bad in certain matchups to suddenly being good.
Yeah, I mean, it will kill a Love-Struck Beast, and that's really good. When I mean, obviously, Rotting Regisaur can beat a Love-Struck Beast in combat, but nobody else will.
Well, and that's not always even clear because if the Love-Struck Beast teams up with Bell, you know.
Yeah.
What about if you're playing the green deck and you want to be better against this black deck? What do you do?
I think that weirdly, I think that what you want might be more the Great Henge, and I know that sounds super strange. Yeah,
that is a little unorthodox.
But like, I have just foregone playing Bell, depending on how the curve goes in a lot of matchups, like mirror match, red, other green decks, black. If I can just go turn 3, 5/5, and then I won't even block if they have like a good attack in, and just so I can go turn 4 reliably the Great Henge, and then tap gain 2 life and maybe just play a troll or play a Scavenging Ooze and get a 3/3 or 4/4 immediately, and then just sit back on 2 points of life gain plus some card advantage per turn. That's like the main, like if you get that combo and they let it sit for 1 turn, right? Then they kill the Love-Struck Beast and it's kind of too late. You'll often just overwhelm them because like then you have enough mana to do every single thing in your deck. You can drop a Nissa, you can play a huge Serpent. It
kind of seems very, pardon the expression, but next level against their sideboard plan. Like if they're sideboarding in Noxious Grasp and Grasp of Darkness and Eliminate, and your plan is more the Great Henge.
Yeah, I think the Great Henge is just too good in too many matchups. But it's like a combo deck where you're just like Love-Struck Beast the Great Henge, and then no one. I mean, these decks that play fair, they can't really beat you. Like the decks that beat you when you have that combo are the ones who can like Brazen Borrow where you're the Great Henge and your Love-Struck Beast, so then it becomes extremely cost prohibitive for you to get it back online. Something, or like they combo kill you or like gain complete control of the game or something. But people who are just like also playing creatures, attacking and blocking, yada yada yada, they are not good against that combination of cards. Like they're very bad against 5/5 the Questing Beast draw card. Like
So there's a deck that really caught my eye this week that I wanted to get your take on. John Smith, top 16, the 7/5 event with a Titan's Nest, Peer into the Abyss combo deck.
Okay.
With 4 copies of Discontinuity and 4 copies of Wishclaw Talisman.
I saw this deck. I had no idea what was going on. I'm so glad you brought it up because this is also like an 80 card deck, right? I'm like, we're getting mileage out of Yorion.
Well, how do you fit all the combos without having 80 cards? Come on, man.
I don't even know what this deck does. So it has 4 Wishclaw Talisman. I'm like, okay, Wishclaw Talisman. I got it. What the heck am I getting?
Okay. So let's start off. A good rule of thumb, when you see a baffling collection of cards.
Yeah.
But some of them are at least cards that show up. And some of them are cards that you might need. That might be a reader. You might not even know what it does. Go to the cards that you don't know what they do or that just nobody plays. Any of them that can like search, just assume that they're setting something up. But when you find a card that does who freaking knows, that's the key. So obviously here, Peer into the Abyss is like a wild card that it's like, okay, there's something important going on here because who plays with this 7-cost card? And obviously it's a very powerful effect to either draw 20-something cards or whatever, or to, make your opponent lose half their life, to say nothing of possibly decking them under weird circumstances, right? But there's a even weirder card, Titan's Nest. 4 copies of Titan's Nest, which is 1 black, green, blue enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard, and it has exile a card from your graveyard to get colorless. Spend this mana only to cast a colored spell without X in its mana cost. So this card does a couple things. ostensibly, like top level, it gives you some selection. It stocks your graveyard. And then most importantly, you can exile cards from your graveyard to get mana. So it's a big ramp card.
So
remember, you don't have to. Okay, yeah.
So you're only ever getting one colorless mana.
No. It's per card. Exile a card, colon. Oh. It just means that your cards have delve. All your cards they have to be colored and not have an X. But as long as they don't have an X and they do have a color, they have delve.
Oh, this is way better of a card than I was evaluating. I feel like we've had this conversation before.
Dude, so that means that you can cast the Uro out of your hand for 2. You can cast Peer into the Abyss for only 3. You can cast all sorts of these spells like Cultivate or Extinction Event or whatever for 1 mana. But the thing that gets really kind of exciting is that, so Peer into the Abyss, first of all, if you peer into the Abyss and you discard all your cards, man, do you have unlimited mana, right? But second of all, if you've got a bunch of mana, boy, do you love drawing 20 cards. Next, if you have discontinuity, then you can start getting into some real interesting territory.
Well, discontinuity is pretty cheap now if we have Titan's Nest, right?
Oh, yeah. So if you have Titan's Nest, it costs 3 to do on your opponent's turn or 2 to do on your turn. But being able to drop Titan's Nest, like think about it this way. When you have, if you play Titan's Nest, on the next turn, you can discontinuity your opponent during their turn, during their upkeep.
Yeah.
You get to just play Time Stop for 3 mana.
You steal their draw step. You steal their attack phase.
Right. And it's not going to come up all that often, but there's some real fancy plays you can do. Like, for instance, if you peer into the Abyss yourself and then you discontinuity, first of all, it only costs you 2 mana, right? But second, you don't have a discard. So you just have 27 cards or whatever.
That's hot.
Yeah. And
so
then
you could ostensibly do that for 5 mana, right?
Right. Yeah.
BBB and
what's
then
the curve?
EU.
You can just go turn 4, Titan's Nest, and then as long as you got a bunch of cards into your graveyard, if you got 5 cards into your graveyard, then you can just go. But you don't even need 5 cards naturally because the Titan's Nest will get you 1, and then the longer the game goes on, plus if you have any Fabled Passages or Growth Spirals or whatever, or Arboreal Grazer even chump blocking. But this is also a deck with a toolbox. You got Wishclaw Talisman and a bunch of one-ofs. Azusa, that's an interesting card in a deck with Ugin and Peer into the Abyss. And Ugin, it's testament to Ugin's strength that it's in here despite being colorless. But just having one at the top of your curve is just so powerful to mention. But it actually goes further than just all this Dryad of the Elysian Grove and Azusa and Tameo and Legion's End and Ritual Soot and Casualties of War. The one copy of Fae of Wishes opens up a bunch of stuff too.
Even more tutoring.
Oh yeah. There's Witch's Vengeance, Necromentia, Grafdigger's Cage, Narset's Reversal. Plus, just sometimes you just want more Peer into the Abyss action.
So, how do you win with this deck?
You could either be up 20-something cards and see what that does for you, or you could, be in a spot where because you have like an Uro on the table, you out of nowhere surprise hit your opponent. But it doesn't even matter at that point. Really, it's just about the fact that you get this overwhelming card and mana advantage. You just arrive at the state where you have either a Titan's Nest or a Nissa, and then you peer into the Abyss, and then that's it. Like, you just have so big of an advantage from being up 20 cards or whatever that you completely bury your opponent. You get to, like, when you draw half your deck, you can just time walk your opponent, untap, and then you just have a billion cards in your hand. Figure out a way to win. You have, like, if you just have a ton of mana and half your deck in your hand and a bunch of time walks, you'll be able to piece it together, whether you win with Nissa or Uro or Feo Wishes or whatever. And it's not like your opponent even gets to use the Wishclaw Talisman. So I don't know, man. I think that the other thing is that when you Yorion, that's the big thing, is that you have this deterministic aspect of Yorion. When you Yorion, and by the way, when you're drawing half your deck, it's pretty sick that your deck's 80 cards instead of 60. Yeah. That way you end up drawing like 30 instead of 20.
Pick up 30 for sure.
Oh yeah, but the when you Yorion, one of the things you can do is you can actually blink all kinds of stuff here. Like the blinking of Wishclaw Talisman, you can't blink it when your opponent controls it, but you can reset the counters that are on it. And then you can blink stuff like your Planeswalkers and the Grazer just for more mana. But the biggest thing is that Yorion just gives you a victory condition that you can count on. And you only have to spend 2 mana on it. So that's pretty sweet.
You can't use the Titan's Nest to do the initial get the Yorion, right?
You cannot, no. Nope, but you can, you do get to save the 3 from Yorion when you actually do it,
All right.
So, this deck is sweet, right?
Yeah, I was like very confused when I was looking at it. Just like, I didn't really get to the point of, I guess we just win with an overwhelming amount of card and mana advantage. I thought that, like, okay, there's one Tamiyo. Okay, I know what Tamiyo does in decks that have one Tamiyo. I was kind of in that mode where you're like using Tamiyo as a reset loop or something.
Tamiyo here. Let's see, all these one-ofs you have, Tamiyo gives you another look. Like you can use Tamiyo to get back your 1 copy of Ugin sometimes, Or you might be in a spot where you just play a second Casualties of War, and that's how you get them.
So this is just largely a hard Peer into the Abyss deck.
Yes, it's more of a Peer into the Abyss deck than a Titan's Nest deck. The Titan's Nest is more exciting, but you can do it without the Nest. It's just whatever stuff you're doing eventually leads into peering into the Abyss. Now, you might establish control too fast, so you might just get the better of your opponent because you've got Uro and Nissa, but really, all roads lead to peer into the Abyss.
I think this is a deck that relies on having kind of a certain less than wide cohort of potential opponents, because this deck does not seem well suited to defending itself against the many different monocolored aggro decks that are right now. Right?
I wouldn't want to face a mono red deck, but are you really that bad against a mono green deck?
Yes, there is 1 Ritual of Suit and 1 Cry of the Carnarium and 1 Aether Gust in an 80 card deck. I'm not saying that they can't get the can't get you like, all right, I'm gonna draw a bunch of those cards. That's sweet. But like the mono green deck is just used to playing against people who are better than them on account of borrowing Growth Spiral from their color and then putting it into some disgustingly overpowered deck. The mono green deck is already used to that, right? And those decks often have multiple copies of Shatter the Sky or Elspeth Conquers Death or great blockers like Birth of Meletis and stuff. And it can persevere. They can withstand the first defensive play and then get you with a Questing Beast or get you with Nissa or like you were saying before, sneak it in. Anybody plus a giant X spell will do it. And those things are all true here, except for this deck is capable of much clunkier, non-perfect defensive draws than any of those decks. So I think like it's clearly super sweet. Like the idea of having a deck that is like hardened to peer into the abyss is awesome to me. But I don't know. I play against a lot of like mono green decks, mono red decks, Rakdos Sacrifice. People who are like swinging with haste creatures.
Yeah, I don't think this is the deck for that metagame. I think this is a deck for if you're going into it thinking, I want to beat Wilderness Reclamation Shark Typhoon decks.
Yeah.
I want to beat other Yorion decks. I want to beat ramp decks. I want to beat, I don't know, some theoretical weird plot. Oh, how about like the blue-green ramp deck? Like
my gosh.
Yeah, Shatoon's deck. I bet you crush them. Not crush them.
Okay.
I bet you're probably a little ahead of them.
Infinity times infinity _ Shatoon _ 10th place deck from the same event. This is my deck of the week. I am in love with this deck, and I have one question. I assume Shatoon figured this out, and I'm just dumb. But we can talk about what the deck does. 4 Nissa Who Shakes the World, 4 Ugin the Spirit Dragon, a lot of the same setup we were seeing before, 4 Grazer, 4 Crassus, 4 Solemn Simulacrum, 4 Cultivate. Instead of topping up as a Sultide deck with Casualties of War, Shatoon just played 2 Mass Manipulation, so went easy on the colors. The thing that's weird to me is, I get this from the perspective of the sideboard, right? So Shatoon played 2 Leafkin Druid, but no Uro. There's no Uro in this 75.
Yep.
I assume it's right, but it seems like it can't be right.
That it's not.
Yeah, okay. I don't want to say
assume
that.
It's not. Here's the reason
I didn't want to say that.
Okay.
Yeah, the reason it's the best card you could possibly play in this strategy, this color combination?
Well, I think that, so when I look at this and I see that there's 2 Leafkin Druids instead of the Uros, my thought is, okay, clearly this is somebody who it matters that much that they go into, that they can play a turn ahead of schedule.
Yep.
Right? But there's 4 Cultivates, and I think that the dimension that Uro adds, and I love Cultivate. I think that a lot of people are underestimating how much better Cultivate might be than Uro in a lot of decks and spots. But there's also, is Uro really that much worse than Solemn Simulacrum?
I mean, I was thinking, like, I would happily cut 1 land, 1 Cultivate, and 2 Ugins even. No. See, first of all, I actually don't know. I don't think I would play 4. I think I would only play 2. I think it adds. You got to play some.
Yeah, I think it adds a good dimension, but I do think that with this many permanents and this much air, the Uro is not at its best here. I just think it's too good of a dimension when the game stretches to pass up. I wouldn't cut Cultivate though. I think Cultivate's a messed up card in this current format.
I agree, but Uro on the front side is the same as Cultivate, basically.
Yeah, but just play 5. Like, I would just play 2 Uros and, like, I guess 6. But I like cutting a land for an Uro. And
yeah, because Uro kind of this is a 28 land deck already. Uro kind of gets you there by itself.
But who knows? They put up the finish. I am sympathetic to the thought that if they did it, it must have been right. It's pretty sick, So to just not have Uro in this deck.
So maybe instead of 10th place, they would have been in first place if they had just had Uro. But
dude, what do you think of the 15-card sideboard to transform into a flash deck?
That's why I love this deck so much. And I was just, all right, the Leafkin Druid makes so much sense. If you're going to play a sideboard of 4 Night Pack Ambusher, 3 Frilled Mystic, right? Like,
and Mystical Dispute too, because you really are going to end up in spots where you play the Leafkin Druid, and then you cultivate and protect it or something,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Leafkin Druid makes so much sense in the context of the sideboard. The one thing that I think is weird, this is going to sound weird because this is, one of the best cards in the format, but Shark Typhoon, is that really the best card to play?
It is, because if you're going to transform, your biggest weakness is Teferi, and you're going to want to transform against people who have Teferi. And I think Shark Typhoon is just too for how powerful it is and how on plan it is. It's so good against your biggest weakness.
Oh, I guess it just splatters to fairy. All right.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Like no matter what they do.
Exactly. And it's not like it's off plan. It's both on your core plan and your sideboard plan. But it's just not at its best enough to be in your main deck because you're just not playing enough spells at all, or not even about spells, but I mean, you're not playing enough instants. So you don't really get to take advantage of the instant speed aspect that's some of what you're paying for.
So for me, 1,000,000%, this is the deck of the week. I think this deck is really, really exciting. I can't wait to try it. Other than, I think I would play some Uros.
I could imagine that it might be right to not play Uro. Did you see VTCLA's? This is from a different event. I think it's on the 6th, but the red-green like Gruul aggro with Skargan Hellkite. You know, Brad actually just put up a finish last week, literally right after we recorded. See Brad putting up numbers with Terror of the Peaks. But here we see the Skargan Hellkite coming back.
Yeah, I think this is one way to do it. I'm not sure. I guess Embercleave is really, really powerful. I'm just thinking,
Embercleave is really, really powerful. That's true, but you're only playing 2, so obviously you don't believe in it that much.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, why do you go this way instead of mono green or mono red? Yeah, I'm not sure that
that's actually the same thought I had. Is that when I look at this collection of cards, they're all fine. They're good cards and stuff, but I don't know why you're not either mono red or mono green. I don't know what you're picking up that makes it worth trying to do both.
Like, this deck just seems way less consistent than mono red, and it has a way lower ceiling than mono green. Right? I don't know.
It has a less consistent ceiling, I'll give you that.
I guess
actually no. I guess it has a lower ceiling anyway. Embercleave's pretty big, but it's not like Embercleave's. The mono green deck ceiling can kind of go nuts sometimes.
Yeah, the mono green deck has got like Lovestruck Beast into Great Henge, and it's got like all the Nissa X spell draws, right? And so I think like the mono green deck, if you don't stop it from executing its plan of laying lands and playing expensive cards, it's gonna top you up. I mean, you get Cindervines, which is a card that neither of those other strategies can play, and Cindervines is an excellent card. But I don't know.
Dude, one of the things that's interesting, though, is literally the same list. Doomwake put up a top 16 finish on an earlier day. Same list.
Maybe I'm missing it. I'm not sure. Like, even the card Temple of Abandon seems weird to me. Like, this is a Pelt Collector deck. You just miss something.
Well, I just don't think you can. Trying to play no Temple of Abandons and no Fabled Passages in a deck with both Questing Beast and Embercleave, I just don't think is happening.
I guess there is no better combo than Questing Beast wearing an Embercleave, though. That guy kills everything, lives through everything, deals 9, right? That's basically his MO. I will kill that thing, which I have 100 Stonecoil Serpent. Cool. Kill it, 9 trample. That is cool. I'm in for that.
Does Zeldian's mono green deck from the 6th do anything for you? It's got 2 copies of the Great Henge, like you predicted. But it has the Vivian Arcbow Ranger set up instead of Nissa. Or are you just too into Nissa?
I think that Nissa has been outstanding for me.
The other part that's interesting on this list is that it just has Yorvos instead of any Primal Mites in the main deck.
Yeah, I think.
And then the Primal Mites are in the board along with Shifting Ceratops.
I think I just prefer the other build.
Okay.
So this deck has 2 Ram Throughs in the main deck, but it has the same problem you were saying before. It has 2 Gem Razors, potentially Pelt Collector. That guy has Trample sometimes. And Stonecoil Serpent, it's not a great ram through deck. The weirder card, I think, is Mobilized District. So if you're not playing a Nissa deck, then Mobilized District, I think, is a little more text. I'm not a huge fan of Mobilized District.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
I don't know. I've so often played one Mobilized District in different decks, and I've never, I don't know, it doesn't, I don't know. I haven't had it matter that much one way or the other. So I just don't have that much data on it. Well, it's weird. It's not the greatest with Yorvo. So once you're on the Yorvo plan, I guess I'm sympathetic to cutting the Mobilized District. But if I didn't have Yorvo, I think I would play one Mobilized District.
Your Mobilized District is actually pretty good with Vivian Arcbow Ranger, though. So, like if you get swept or something, or you have one creature, it does give you another body to exploit the +1 on Vivian Arcbow Ranger. But I think that a lot of the elements of this deck make it less consistent. Like 4 Castle Garenbrigs instead of 2, 19 Forests. It has actually a little more land overall, though. It is weird to me that this deck and Edel, I assume, independently came to the conclusion of 2 Gemraiser in the main, 2 in the sideboard. When that is an outstanding card. So.
Well, no, I mean this one only has 1 Gemraiser in the sideboard.
Oh.
But I think once you have 3 Vivian Arcbow Ranger, there's a little bit more argument for having 1 Gemraiser in the sideboard. That's why there's 1 Scavenging Ooze, 1 Gemraiser, and I mean the Shifting Ceratops you're going to do anyway. But like Vivian Arcbow Ranger's ultimate is only 1 turn away, and it's kind of a sick option to be able to go get the Gemraiser or the Ooze.
That's true. I just can't say enough about Scavenging Ooze. I think it's shocking to me. There's like games where I was certain one party or the other had just won, right? Like the game wasn't over yet, like 3 turns to go or something, but game was, over in my head. And then just Scavenging Ooze appears, and then the game is not only not over, but it goes in the other direction in flamboyant fashion. All of a sudden, there's a 9/9 on one side. Other guy can't attack anymore.
So there is one last little piece of tech. Maybe it's just not that consequential. It's kind of subtle, but I wanted to take your temperature on Jegantha the Wellspring as the companion option for Poke Kilm's 5/0 list of it's a Rakdos Sacrifice deck. It's got the Village Rites, Claim the First, all the stuff you'd expect. It's just all kinds of stuff you'd expect. But then its companion is Jegantha.
I think that's a totally reasonable thing to do. You just have a companion. It doesn't cost them anything, right?
Part of it is what they're getting. You see, they get to have each of the options because they have Mayhem Devil, Midnight Reaper, and Woe Strider. They can't put Lurrus in the sideboard, and because they've got Priest of Forgotten Gods, they can't play Obosh. So it's just sort of they want to have all the stuff, and all the stuff that really matters doesn't really cost them. They can still Jegantha, so they just do, even though it doesn't. It's not that personalized to their deck, but why not?
Yeah, I think that the number of games they're going to win with Jegantha is probably relatively few, but it's nice to have the option to draw an extra card.
Yeah, and it's not like it's the worst, to follow up. Like, you got enough on the board and your opponent's going to have to sweep.
Yeah.
Taking that turn to draw Jegantha, it's a nice way to, still be productive, Yeah,
it's fine. I think that among the sideboard cards, what I'm really excited about is 4 Rotting Regisaur here. That's a big innovation in...
No, dude, I don't know, man. I've been telling people to play Rotting Regisaur in these kind of decks They keep doing it. I don't know.
I mean, it was completely absent for 2 cycles where Rakdos Sacrifice was one of the top decks.
I don't know. We'll have to check the receipts on this one. But I do like to see it here.
You could call the Death Dweller it and give it a menace counter. It's insane.
And you can discard a creature so that Call of the Death Dweller can have a second target. sometimes, just because like that way you can just be proactive, right? Sure.
It's very
Okay.
good. It's very good. I think in this deck, and I actually think it gives it a meaningful different dimension because the Rakdos Sacrifice archetype is relatively aggressive. It's clearly not the fastest aggressive deck in the format versus mono red or some builds of mono green, but like this card makes it super fast if they want to be fast.
Love it. My only critique here, I could not stomach playing only 3 Village Rites. I would play 4, no question. I would play 5.
It's got to be better than Midnight Reaper, right?
I would shuffle if I had to, as long as like if I don't have to cut the Cauldron Familiar or the Witch's Oven, dude, I'll shuffle up to get a Village Rites. Pull one out at random.
You mean you can't cut Mayhem Devil?
I could cut anything else for Village Rites as long as it's not one of those two.
Village Rites is so good with Claim the Firstborn. Like, it's bad enough when they go like first turn Oven, and then they're like, claim the Firstborn, your awesome creature, Witch's Oven it. It's way worse when they Village Rites it instead of getting a stupid food. This deck doesn't break food. All it does is exchange food for Cauldron Familiars. You know, they get you real good with Village Rites.
Yep. All right. Well, awesome, man. Lots of sweet stuff. And it will be interesting to see on Monday what kind of bands they have in mind, because some of the formats, you know, it's been a little, you know, there's been a lot of fallout from the recent bans and changes. And from the looks of it, we're not quite done yet.
So there's a lot of fallout from the cards they printed in the sets that came out. All right, cool. What's your favorite deck of the week? Mine for sure is Shatten, but I love Edel also.
Dude, I'm in for the Peer into the Abyss.
All right, super respectable. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. See you next week.
Ghost in life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge just for jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way